The sharp antiseptic scent hit me first, a stinging reminder that I wasn't dead. I opened my eyes to a glaring fluorescent light, the ceiling tiles above me forming an endless checkerboard. My body ached in ways I didn't think possible. Every muscle, every joint, felt like it had been wrung dry and left to stiffen. A faint beeping sound accompanied each shaky breath I took, its rhythmic cadence grounding me as I pieced together fragments of the last thing I remembered. The car, the sharp turn, and the brakes that didn't respond. I was alive, though barely. A nurse bustled in, her soft sneakers barely making a sound on the polished linoleum. She offered a professional smile, the kind that suggested she had seen patients far worse off than me. "Mr. Marchand, you're awake? How are you feeling?" "Like I've been run over by my own company truck," I muttered, my voice hoarse. The attempt at humor was weak, but it felt better than asking the questions clawing at my mind. "Not quite," she replied gently, checking my fore. "You were in a serious car accident. You're lucky to be alive." Lucky. That word felt wrong, almost mocking. Through the glass-paneled door, I caught a glimpse of movement. My kids, Elena and James, stood just outside, their faces pale and anxious. Elena, at 12, was already showing signs of her mother's poise, but her eyes betrayed her worry. 9-year-old James clutched a stuffed bear to his chest, the same one I gave him on his last birthday. Behind them, Alicia stood like a marble statue. Her blonde hair, immaculately styled, framed her face in a way that might have seemed caring to an outsider. But I knew better. Alicia was all about appearances. The faint tremor in her perfectly manicured hands caught my attention, though, and for a moment, I wondered if she truly was shaken. The nurse followed my gaze and offered a sympathetic smile. "Your family's been waiting to see you. Should I let them in?" "Give me a minute." My voice cracked, but she nodded, leaving me alone with the sharp realization that something was terribly wrong. The accident replayed in my mind like a bad movie. It was supposed to be a routine drive home from the Marchand Innovations headquarters in Palo Alto. Traffic on the 101 had been light for a Thursday evening, the kind of rare Californian reprieve that almost made the drive enjoyable. I remembered the dashboard glowing faintly, the low hum of a jazz station I couldn't recall. Then, the brakes. Or rather, the absence of them. I felt it instantly, the car not responding as I approached the curve near the estate. Panic surged as the curve loomed closer, the trees blurring into a chaotic smear of green and brown. My last conscious thought was of my children. Not the company, not the wealth, but Elena and James. Now, here I was, piecing together shattered fragments in a hospital bed. The door opened quietly, and Alicia walked in, her heels clicking softly against the floor. She wore a tailored cream-colored blazer, probably Chanel, and her lips were painted in a soft pink that always seemed too perfect for any situation. "Nick," she breathed, rushing to my side and clasping my hand. Her grip was firm, but not warm. "Thank God you're awake. We've been so worried." I searched her eyes for something genuine. Concern? Relief? Guilt? "Where are Elena and James?" I asked, ignoring her theatrics. "They're outside," she replied smoothly, her expression softening. "I thought it would be better if they saw you after you'd had a moment to settle." "They're my kids, Alicia. They've been worried about me." My voice was sharper than I intended, but I didn't care. She nodded, a flicker of something, irritation, crossing her face. "Of course. I'll bring them in." She left the room without another word. When Elena and James entered, the tension in my chest eased. Elena hugged me carefully, her arms trembling as she tried to be gentle. James stood by my side, clutching my hand with a grip far stronger than I expected. "Daddy," he whispered, his voice thick with unshed tears. "I'm okay," I said, trying to sound reassuring despite the lump in my throat. "It's going to take a little time, but I'll be home soon." They stayed for only a few minutes before Alicia ushered them back out, insisting they needed to eat and rest. The room felt colder once they were gone. Later that evening, a detective arrived, introducing himself as Detective Harris from the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his suit slightly rumpled, but his eyes were sharp. "Mr. Marchand, I'm glad to see you're recovering," he began, pulling out a notepad. "I'm here to ask a few questions about the accident." "Go ahead," I said, though every muscle in my body screamed in protest. "We've been investigating the cause of the crash," he said, his tone measured. "The initial findings suggest that the brakes on your vehicle were tampered with." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. I stared at him, struggling to process. "Tampered with?" I echoed. "Yes," he said grimly. "This wasn't an accident, Mr. Marchand. Someone deliberately sabotaged your car." The air in the room grew heavier, suffocating. I thought of my company, my estate, the people in my life who stood to gain if I were out of the picture. "Do you have any idea who might want to harm you?" Detective Harris asked, his pen poised over the notepad. I didn't answer immediately. Faces flashed through my mind. Business rivals, disgruntled employees, even acquaintances who might have nursed quiet resentments. "No," I said finally, though my voice lacked conviction. "Not yet." As the detective left, promising to keep me updated, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. Someone wanted me dead, and whoever it was, they weren't going to stop until they succeeded. That was the moment I decided. No matter how long it took, I would find out who tried to kill me. And when I did, they'd regret ever underestimating Nicholas Marchand. The next morning, the quiet hum of the hospital was interrupted by a visitor I hadn't expected. A stocky man with grease-streaked hands and a clipboard tucked under one arm appeared at the door. He looked out of place in his oil-stained work shirt and worn jeans, his boots leaving faint scuffs on the polished floor. "Mr. Marchand?" he asked, stepping in cautiously. His voice was gruff, yet carried an air of authority. "That's me," I replied, sitting up slightly in the bed. The movement sent a dull ache through my ribs, but I masked the discomfort. "And you are?" "Name's Tony Russo," he said, offering a brief nod. "I'm a mechanic contracted by your insurance company to investigate the vehicle. I've been going over your car since the accident." His expression was serious, his lips pressed into a thin line. Something about his demeanor made my stomach knot. "I appreciate the thoroughness," I said, forcing a polite tone. "What did you find?" Tony hesitated, flipping through his clipboard before meeting my gaze. "Mr. Marchand, I'll be straight with you. Your brakes didn't fail because of wear and tear. They were tampered with." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. "Tampered with?" I repeated, my voice low. He nodded, his expression grim. "Someone deliberately cut the brake lines. Clean cuts, done with precision. Whoever did it knew what they were doing. They wanted it to look like an accident, but not enough to fool someone like me." I stared at him, the implications swirling in my head like a storm. This wasn't just an accident. It was a deliberate attempt on my life. "Are you absolutely certain?" I asked, needing him to say it again, to confirm the horrifying reality. "As certain as I've ever been in my 20 years of doing this," Tony said firmly. "I've already reported it to the insurance company and the police. They'll be following up soon, but I figured you deserved to hear it from me first." 1,000 questions flooded my mind, but one rose above the rest. "Who? Did you tell anyone else about this?" I asked. "Only the authorities," he said. "And now you." I nodded, gripping the edge of the bed so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Thank you, Tony. I appreciate you coming here to tell me personally." He hesitated for a moment, as if debating whether to say more. "Mr. Marchand, you should watch your back. Whoever did this didn't just want to scare you. They wanted you gone." With that, he left, his heavy footsteps echoing down the hallway. I sat there for what felt like hours, the weight of Tony's revelation pressing down on me. The realization hit hard. This wasn't the work of a random enemy or disgruntled competitor. The precision, the planning, it pointed to someone close. Someone who knew my routines, my habits, my vulnerabilities. My thoughts drifted to Alicia. Her perfectly staged concern in the hospital room now seemed more like theater. I remembered the faint tremor in her hands when she visited. Was it fear or guilt? And then there was Donovan Steele, my oldest business rival. He had been circling Marchand Innovations like a vulture for years, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Could he have found a way to bypass my security and get to the car? Or had he worked through someone closer, someone I trusted? My chest tightened as I thought of Elena and James. What if they had been with me that night? What if the car had veered off the road just moments earlier, with no chance to brace for impact? The thought was unbearable. The line between paranoia and caution blurred as I mentally cataloged the people in my life, each name accompanied by a flicker of suspicion. Later that evening, Detective Harris returned, his expression more serious than before. "I just got word from the mechanic," he said, pulling out his notepad. "He confirmed what I suspected. Your brakes were tampered with. This wasn't an accident, Mr. Marchand." I didn't bother feigning surprise. "Any leads on who might have done it?" Harris studied me, his gaze sharp. "Not yet, but we'll be investigating everyone with access to your vehicle. That includes family, friends, employees, and contractors." "Family?" I asked, the words sticking in my throat. "Unfortunately, we can't rule anyone out," he said bluntly. "We're dealing with someone who knows you well enough to anticipate your movements. That narrows the pool significantly." His words confirmed what I already feared. This was an inside job. By the time Harris left, my mind was racing. The betrayal wasn't just professional. It was personal. Someone I trusted, maybe even someone I loved, had tried to kill me. I looked at the wedding band on my finger, the weight of it suddenly unbearable. Alicia's face flashed in my mind again. Her careful words, her calm demeanor. The way she'd insisted on bringing the kids to the hospital, but had kept them outside, away from me. I clenched my fists, determination replacing the initial shock. Whoever was behind this, they thought they'd won. They thought they could take me out and move on, unscathed. They were wrong. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The gates of the Marchand estate opened with a quiet hum, revealing the sprawling grounds I'd worked my entire life to build. Acres of manicured lawns stretched toward the horizon, interrupted only by the circular driveway that led to the main house. The mansion itself, a sprawling blend of Georgian architecture and modern opulence, stood like a fortress, its pristine white columns glinting in the late afternoon sunlight. As the car came to a stop, I took a deep breath. This was home, but for the first time, it felt like enemy territory. Gabriel Rossi, the head of my estate security, was the first to greet me. He stood at the base of the marble steps, his sharp suit and neatly combed dark hair at odds with the rugged scar running from his jawline to his temple. "Mr. Marchand," he said, his voice steady as ever. "Welcome back. The staff has been briefed to give you space to recover, but I'm here if you need anything." I nodded, studying him for a beat too long. Gabriel had been with me for nearly a decade, his loyalty proven time and again. But in light of the brake sabotage, I couldn't help but wonder if even he might have secrets. "Thanks, Gabriel," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Anything unusual while I was gone?" "Nothing worth mentioning," he replied smoothly, "but I'll keep an extra eye on things." I wasn't sure whether to feel reassured or wary. Inside, Alicia stood in the foyer, her delicate frame draped in a flowing silk dress that skimmed her knees. Her smile was warm, almost too warm, and her arms spread wide as if she'd missed me more than anything in the world. "Nick," she breathed, stepping forward to embrace me. Her touch was light, but I couldn't ignore the slight stiffness in her movements. The familiarity of her perfume, jasmine and vanilla, felt oddly oppressive now, a reminder of how much I had once trusted her. "I'm glad you're home," she said, pulling back just enough to study my face. "You look, well, considering everything." "Thanks," I replied, my tone clipped. "It's good to be back." The words felt hollow. Before I could say more, a voice interrupted from the sitting room, smooth and laced with just enough arrogance to set my teeth on edge. "Nick, the man of the hour." I turned to see Donovan Pierce lounging on one of my leather armchairs, a crystal tumbler of bourbon in his hand. His tailored navy suit clung to him like a second skin, and his salt and pepper hair was styled with meticulous precision. "What are you doing here, Donovan?" I asked, stepping forward. Donovan rose with the easy confidence of a man who believed he owned the room. "Business, of course," he said, flashing a practiced grin. "When I heard about your little incident, I thought I'd stop by to discuss a few concerns. You know, in case you needed someone to step in temporarily." I clenched my jaw. I'm perfectly capable of running my company. Of course you are, he said, the mock sincerity in his tone grating on my nerves. But it never hurts to be prepared. Besides, he added, glancing at Alicia with a knowing smile, it's always nice to catch up with old friends. Alicia's lips curved into a polite smile, but something about the way her eyes flicked away from mine set alarm bells ringing. The tension thickened as the three of us sat in the grand sitting room, the crackling fireplace doing little to warm the atmosphere. So, how's recovery going? Donovan asked, swirling his bourbon. Fine, I replied curtly. Doctors say I'll be back to normal in no time. Glad to hear it, he said, leaning back in his chair. Marchand Innovations wouldn't be the same without you at the helm. I studied him, searching for the hidden barbs beneath his words. Donovan had been circling my company like a vulture for years, and his presence here now felt like more than just concern. As Donovan rambled on about market trends, Bella Thompson appeared in the doorway. She was Alicia's closest friend, or at least that's what she liked to portray. Dressed in a sleek black sheath dress and carrying an air of quiet intrigue, Bella always seemed to know more than she let on. Nick, she said, her voice lilting, I was just telling Alicia how relieved I am that you're all right. You gave us quite the scare. Thanks, Bella, I said, though her presence only added to my unease. She leaned against the doorway, her gaze flicking between Donovan and Alicia before landing on me. Accidents like that always make you wonder, though, don't they? I stiffened. What do you mean? Oh, nothing, she said lightly, though the hint of a smirk tugged at her lips. Just that unexpected evidence always has a way of surfacing when you least expect it. Keeps things interesting, doesn't it? Before I could press her for more, she turned to Alicia. Darling, we should chat later. I have some fascinating news. Alicia nodded, her smile strained. Of course. The rest of the evening passed in a haze of forced politeness and veiled barbs. Donovan eventually excused himself, leaving behind the faintest whiff of cologne and suspicion. As I watched him leave, I couldn't shake the image of his hand lingering on Alicia's arm just a moment too long, or the way her laughter sounded a little too genuine at his jokes. Before bed, I called Marcus Wade, my CFO. Once a loyal ally, Marcus had grown increasingly distant in recent months, his decisions occasionally raising red flags. Marcus, I said when he picked up, I need you to review the company's financials for any irregularities. Focus on anything involving Donovan Pierce. There was a pause on the other end before Marcus replied, his tone cautious. Of course, Nick. I'll get on it right away. But something about his hesitation made me wonder if he was hiding something, or if someone had already gotten to him. As I lay in bed that night, Alicia beside me, the weight of the day pressed down hard. The estate, once a sanctuary, now felt like a battleground. Everyone had a role to play, but the lines between friend and foe were blurring fast. And in the shadows of my mind, one thought loomed large. Someone close to me wanted me dead, and I was going to find out who. The morning light spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the breakfast nook, casting a warm glow over the long oak table. Elena and James sat at their usual spots, nibbling on pancakes topped with fresh berries. Their laughter echoed through the room as they exchanged jokes, but beneath the cheerful facade, the strain was palpable. I sipped my coffee, trying to immerse myself in their conversation, but my thoughts kept drifting back to Alicia's subtle changes, the guarded looks, the late-night phone calls, and her overplayed concern since my return. Dad, Elena said, breaking my train of thought. I looked up. She was watching me with her mother's eyes, sharp and intuitive beyond her 12 years. Are you feeling better? She asked, her voice tentative. I'm fine, sweetheart, I replied, forcing a smile. Just trying to get back into the swing of things. James chimed in. Are you going to work today? Not yet, I said, ruffling his hair. I'm staying here for a while. Someone's got to make sure you two don't cause too much trouble. They giggled, but I caught Elena glancing toward Alicia, who was seated at the far end of the table. Alicia's attention was fixed on her phone, her manicured fingers scrolling rapidly. Mom, who are you texting? Elena asked innocently. Alicia looked up, startled. Just Bella, sweetheart. We're planning a charity event. You know how busy she keeps me. Elena didn't seem convinced, but she let it drop, returning to her pancakes. Later that afternoon, I was in my study reviewing a stack of financial reports when Elena knocked softly on the door. "Come in," I called, setting the papers aside. She entered hesitantly, her brow furrowed. "Dad, I heard Mom on the phone earlier." My pulse quickened. "What did she say?" "I don't know," Elena admitted. "She was in the living room, and I was upstairs, but she sounded weird, like she didn't want anyone to hear her." "Did you hear anything specific?" I asked, keeping my tone even. She shook her head. "Just that she said, it has to be perfect. No mistakes this time." I leaned back in my chair, my mind racing. "Thanks for telling me, kiddo. Don't worry about it, okay? It's probably nothing." But we both knew it wasn't nothing. The next day, Alicia seemed distracted, her movements jittery. She left the house early, claiming she had errands to run. In her absence, I approached Gabriel Rossi, who was stationed near the garage, overseeing the staff's routine tasks. "Gabriel," I said, catching his attention. "Mr. Marchand," he replied, his tone as steady as ever. "Anything unusual to report?" He shook his head. "Nothing worth noting." As we spoke, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at the screen, frowning briefly before silencing it. "Estate matters?" I asked, my voice casual. "Something like that," he replied, his expression unreadable. "Just a routine check-in." His response was plausible, but his evasive demeanor lingered in my mind long after the conversation ended. Later that afternoon, Bella Thompson paid a visit, arriving unannounced as she often did. "Nick," she greeted, her smile enigmatic as she stepped into the sitting room. "How are you holding up?" "I'm managing," I said, gesturing for her to sit. She perched on the edge of the couch, crossing her legs elegantly. "I've been thinking about your accident," she began, her tone measured. "Strange how things like that happen, isn't it?" "What do you mean?" I asked, my defenses rising. She shrugged, her gaze drifting to the window. "Oh, just that life has a funny way of revealing truths when you least expect it. Sometimes it's in the smallest details." Her cryptic remark hung in the air, and I struggled to decipher her intent. "Do you know something I don't, Bella?" I asked, leaning forward. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "If I did, Nick, I'd tell you. Or maybe I wouldn't. Depends on the stakes." Before I could press her further, Marcus Wade appeared in the doorway. "Nick," he said, nodding briefly at Bella before turning to me. "We need to talk about the financials. I've been going through the files like you asked." Bella stood, smoothing her dress. "I'll leave you two to it," she said, her smile returning. "But Nick, do keep an eye on those small details. They're often the most revealing." With that, she left, her parting words lingering like an unanswered riddle. As Marcus and I sat down, his demeanor shifted from professional to uneasy. "I've found something," he said cautiously. "There's a series of withdrawals, small at first, but they've been increasing over the past 6 months. They're routed through a series of shell accounts tied to Donovan Pierce." My chest tightened. "And you're just telling me this now?" "I didn't notice it before," he admitted. "But now, it's clear someone's been funneling money out of the company. I think it's connected to your accident." The room spun as the pieces began falling into place. Alicia, Donovan, Gabriel, Bella, each of them had secrets, and I was running out of time to uncover the truth. The morning after Marcus's revelation about the financial irregularities, I sat in my study, poring over files and emails. My office, with its mahogany desk and walls lined with first edition books, had always been my sanctuary. Now it felt more like a war room. I had taken precautions to ensure my investigation remained discreet. No calls from the estate landline, no emails from my official account. This wasn't just about preserving my reputation. It was about staying one step ahead of whoever wanted me dead. Gabriel Rossi had access to the estate's security cameras, but trusting him with this investigation felt risky. Instead, I requested backup copies of all footage directly from the security system provider, claiming it was for an audit. Hours of video recordings arrived on a secure drive the next day. I combed through the footage myself, starting with the week before the accident. My eyes burned as I clicked through endless clips of staff moving about the estate, delivery vans pulling up to the gate, and Alicia coming and going. Then I found it. The night before the accident, Alicia had left the house around 8 p.m., claiming she was meeting Bella to finalize details for a charity event. But the footage told a different story. Instead of heading to Bella's neighborhood in Los Altos Hills, her car drove toward San Francisco. A second clip showed her parking outside the Ritz-Carlton. Minutes later, Donovan Pierce appeared, dressed in his usual impeccable suit, and greeted her with a hand on her lower back. I didn't stop there. Hacking into Alicia's emails wasn't something I ever imagined doing, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Using an old contact in cybersecurity, I gained access to her inbox. There it was, a string of emails between her and Donovan, carefully worded but brimming with subtext. References to discreet dinners and important strategies painted a picture of far more than just business. That afternoon, I met with Detective Rosa Vega, an old friend from my college days at Berkeley. Rosa had a sharp mind and an unwavering sense of justice, traits that had earned her a reputation as one of the most respected detectives in the Bay Area. "Nick," she said as we sat in a quiet corner of a cafe in Palo Alto, "if Alicia's involved, this could blow up fast. Your accident is already being treated as attempted murder. If you push this too far without concrete evidence, it could turn into a scandal that drags you, your company, and your kids into the spotlight." Her words stung, but she was right. "I can't just let this slide, Rosa," I said, my voice low. "Someone cut those brake lines. If it was Alicia and Donovan's involved, I need to know." "Then tread carefully," she warned. "You need to build your case piece by piece. Don't tip your hand until you're ready to act." The more I dug, the clearer the connection between Alicia and Donovan became. Hotel receipts, unexplained charges on her credit card, and emails about business strategy sessions painted a damning picture. One particular receipt caught my eye: dinner for two at the French Laundry in Napa Valley, dated 3 days before the accident. That evening, as Alicia and I sat in the living room, I decided it was time to confront her. "You've been out a lot lately," I began, keeping my tone neutral. She glanced up from her tablet, her expression guarded. "You know how busy charity work keeps me. And Donovan? Is he helping with that too?" Her eyes narrowed. "What are you implying, Nick?" "I saw the receipts, Alicia," I said, leaning forward. "Dinners, hotels. You've been meeting with him behind my back." Her face hardened, but she didn't flinch. "You're being paranoid. Ever since the accident, you've been seeing threats where there aren't any. Don't turn this on me," I snapped, my voice rising. "I almost died, Alicia. My brakes were sabotaged. Are you really going to stand there and tell me it's all in my head?" "I'm saying you're letting your near-death experience cloud your judgment," she shot back, her tone icy. "Do you hear yourself? Accusing me of what, exactly? Cheating? Sabotage? It's absurd." Her deflection only fueled my anger. "You've been lying to me," I said, my voice low but firm. "I'm going to find out the truth, Alicia, whether you tell me or not." She stood abruptly, her face a mask of controlled fury. "If you want to play detective, go ahead. But don't expect me to stand by while you tear this family apart with your delusions." She stormed out of the room, leaving me alone with the roaring fire and a storm of emotions. As the night wore on, I found myself questioning everything. Alicia's gaslighting was masterful, and for a fleeting moment, I wondered if I was losing my grip. But then I remembered the footage, the emails, and the receipts. The pieces were there, scattered and incomplete, but they painted a clear enough picture. Alicia was hiding something, and I was determined to uncover it, no matter the cost. It was late, the house quiet except for the faint creak of the old wooden beams settling for the night. I sat in my study, the glow of my laptop casting long shadows on the walls. My heart pounded as I opened the encrypted folder sent by my cybersecurity contact. It contained the final piece of the puzzle I had been painstakingly assembling. Emails, phone logs, even photos. Everything was there. Alicia's affair with Donovan wasn't just a fleeting betrayal. It was a calculated, multi-year deception. They had been meeting in secret for years under the guise of business dinners, their rendezvous ranging from exclusive hotels in San Francisco to remote vineyard retreats in Napa Valley. My stomach churned as I scrolled through the messages, each one more damning than the last. Phrases like, "I can't wait to see you tonight," and "Nick won't suspect a thing," seared into my mind. The phone logs showed late-night calls, often hours long, and always on days when Alicia claimed to be out with Bella or at a charity event. The most devastating find was a set of photos from a private investigator I'd hired after my meeting with Rosa Vega. The pictures showed Alicia and Donovan at a secluded rooftop restaurant, her hand resting on his, their expressions intimate and unguarded. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. This was no longer about suspicion or doubt. It was the truth, laid bare. Memories surged to the surface, unbidden and relentless. I remembered a dinner party 2 years ago, hosted at our estate. Donovan had been charming as always, his laughter echoing through the hall as he recounted stories to our guests. Alicia had hovered near him all evening, her laughter too frequent, her gaze lingering on him a beat too long. I had dismissed it then, chalking it up to her social nature. There were other signs too, unexplained charges on her credit card for designer jewelry I'd never seen, sudden defensive postures when I questioned her about her late nights, and her insistence on being present at meetings involving Donovan. I should have seen it earlier, but I didn't. Perhaps I didn't want to. The next morning, Bella Thompson arrived unannounced, as she often did. She perched herself on the edge of the sofa in the sitting room, her expression a blend of nervousness and resolve. "Nick," she began, her tone hesitant. "There's something you need to know." "Go on," I said, folding my arms. "I've suspected Alicia and Donovan for a while," she admitted, avoiding my gaze. "I tried to confront her once, but she threatened me." "Threatened you?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "She said if I said anything, she'd make sure I lost my standing in the social circles we both run in." "She's persuasive, Nick." I studied her carefully. Bella was good at playing the part of the loyal friend, but her motives were always murky. Was she genuinely trying to help, or was this an attempt to save her own skin? "Why tell me now?" I asked. She hesitated, then leaned forward. "Because things are spiraling. Donovan is getting bolder, and Alicia is more reckless than ever. I thought you deserved to know." Her words rang true, but I filed away the possibility that she was playing both sides. Later that afternoon, I summoned Marcus Wade to my office. The CFO arrived looking uncharacteristically nervous, his tie slightly askew. "You've been avoiding me," I said, cutting straight to the point. Marcus sighed heavily, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Nick, I need to come clean about something." "Go on," I said, my tone cold. "Donovan approached me months ago," he admitted. "He offered me money, significant money, to feed him inside information about the company." My jaw tightened. "And did you?" "At first, yes," he confessed, shame coloring his voice. "But I stopped when I realized how far he was willing to go. He didn't just want to sabotage you. He wanted to take everything. Your company, your family, your life." "Why tell me now?" "Because I owe you that much," Marcus said, meeting my gaze. "I regret every second of it, and I want to make things right. I'll help you any way I can." I wasn't sure if he was truly remorseful or just covering his tracks, but for now, I needed him. That evening, as I sat alone in the study, I made a decision. The scope of the betrayal was staggering, but I wasn't going to let it break me. If Donovan and Alicia thought they could destroy me, they were wrong. I started outlining my plan, every step precise and calculated. I wasn't just going to expose their affair. I was going to dismantle their entire scheme. I would gather undeniable evidence, not just of their infidelity, but of the financial sabotage and attempted murder. The idea struck me as I stood on the balcony of my estate, the cool evening breeze rustling the trees below. A grand party, a seemingly innocent celebration, would be the perfect stage to expose Donovan and Alicia for what they truly were. It would be a charity gala, of course. Marchand Innovations had hosted countless events for environmental causes and tech education over the years. No one would suspect it was anything but another glamorous evening. I began making the arrangements the next morning. Invitations were sent out to everyone who mattered: family, close friends, prominent business contacts, and, of course, Donovan and Alicia. Why don't we make it a family affair? I suggested over breakfast, the words dripping with false warmth. Alicia looked up from her coffee, her expression guarded. What do you mean? I'm inviting Elena and James, I said casually. They're old enough to start attending events like this. It'll be good for them to see what we've built together. A flicker of something, panic, perhaps, crossed her face before she quickly masked it. Of course. That's a lovely idea. I knew the presence of our children would make Alicia and Donovan tread carefully, but I wrestled with whether it was right to involve them. Elena was sharp and perceptive, and James was old enough to sense when things were off. Would they understand why I needed to do this? The party planning unfolded swiftly, each detail meticulously designed to serve my greater purpose. The estate's ballroom was transformed into a vision of elegance, with cascading floral arrangements, crystal chandeliers, and soft ambient lighting. It was the kind of scene that would make guests forget they were being watched. Hidden cameras were discreetly installed in key areas, their feeds routed to a secure control room Gabriel had set up. I had told him it was a precaution against potential security threats, a lie that seemed to satisfy him. I also arranged for several large screens to be installed behind gauzy curtains on the stage. To ensure the evidence landed with maximum impact, I hired a trusted audiovisual technician, someone Rosa Vega had personally vetted. The entire presentation was loaded onto an encrypted drive, which I kept on my person at all times. In the days leading up to the party, I conducted quiet tests of loyalty among the key players in my life. Gabriel Rossi. Late one evening, I asked Gabriel to join me in the study. I need your help with something, I said, pouring us each a glass of whiskey. Of course, he replied, his tone as measured as always. I handed him a list of names, staff members who had access to the estate in the weeks before the accident. I need you to quietly investigate these individuals. Look for anything unusual. Sudden changes in behavior, unexplained absences, financial troubles. Gabriel studied the list, then nodded. I'll handle it. As he left, I couldn't shake the feeling that he knew more than he let on. Bella Thompson. Bella was harder to pin down. She arrived unannounced one afternoon, as was her habit, and I seized the opportunity. Bella, I said, offering her a glass of wine, I've been thinking about what you told me the other day. She sipped her wine delicately. What about it? You said Alicia threatened you. Why didn't you come to me sooner? She hesitated, swirling the wine in her glass. Because I wasn't sure who I could trust, she said finally. And to be honest, I didn't want to get caught in the crossfire. But I'm here now, Nick. Isn't that what matters? Her answer was slippery, but I let it slide for now. Marcus Wade. Marcus had been forthcoming about his involvement with Donovan, but I needed to be certain of his intentions moving forward. Marcus, I said during a late-night call, do you have access to Donovan's most recent financial transactions? Some, he admitted. Why? I need proof that he's been funneling money through shell accounts tied to Marchand Innovations. There was a pause on the line before he replied. I'll see what I can find. If Marcus came through, it would solidify his loyalty or confirm his betrayal. The night before the gala, I stood in the ballroom, surveying the setup. The screens were in place, the lighting perfect, and the seating arranged to ensure Donovan and Alicia would be front and center when the reveal happened. The night before the gala, I stood in the ballroom, surveying the setup. The screens were in place, the lighting perfect, and the seating arranged to ensure Donovan and Alicia would be front and center when the reveal happened. The weight of what I was about to do pressed heavily on my shoulders. I thought of Elena and James, of how this would affect them. But the truth had to come out. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice. By the end of tomorrow night, everyone would know the truth, and Donovan and Alicia would finally pay for their betrayal. The Marchand estate buzzed with life as the charity gala unfolded. Guests in designer gowns and tailored suits moved through the ballroom, sipping champagne and exchanging pleasantries. The air was heavy with the hum of conversation, punctuated by bursts of laughter and the gentle clink of glasses. I moved through the crowd with practiced ease, greeting old acquaintances and nodding politely at vague compliments about my recovery. Outwardly, I appeared calm, the perfect host. Inwardly, I was coiled tight, every nerve tuned to Alicia and Donovan's every move. They arrived separately, of course, playing their parts to perfection. Alicia was radiant in a silver gown that shimmered under the soft glow of the chandeliers, her smile dazzling as she flitted from guest to guest. Donovan, ever the charmer, held court near the bar, his laugh a little too loud, his confidence palpable. I watched them carefully, noting every glance they exchanged, every subtle gesture. They believed I was clueless, that I'd bought into their facade. They were wrong. The evening reached its peak just before 9. The guests were gathered in the ballroom, their attention divided between the live band and the silent auction items displayed along the walls. I stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand, and signaled for the band to stop. A hush fell over the room as I addressed the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice steady, "thank you all for being here tonight. Your generosity continues to support the important work Marchand Innovations does for education and the environment." Polite applause rippled through the crowd, and I held up a hand to quiet them. "Before we continue, I need to take a moment to address an important business matter. Something I believe you all deserve to know." The lights flickered, then dimmed, casting the room in an eerie half-darkness. A murmur of confusion spread through the crowd. "Please," I said, "bear with me for a moment." Suddenly, the lights flared back on, but this time, the walls of the ballroom were illuminated with damning images. Photos of Alicia and Donovan together appeared in larger-than-life detail. At hotels, private dinners, and even my own estate. Gasps echoed through the room as guests turned to look at the evidence. On the large screens behind me, screenshots of their private messages scrolled in real time, their incriminating words impossible to deny. One message read, "The car will take care of itself. Once he's out of the way, we'll have everything." Another showed a financial transfer, Donovan wiring money to a shell account tied to Alicia. The final blow was a set of receipts showing Donovan and Alicia booking a private retreat the night before the accident, confirming their continued proximity even as my life hung by a thread. The crowd was silent, the weight of the betrayal crashing down like a tidal wave. I stepped forward, keeping my tone even but letting the anger simmer beneath the surface. "You betrayed me," I said, looking directly at Alicia. "You lied to me, cheated on me, and tried to destroy everything I've built, not just the company but this family." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She glanced at the crowd, then at Donovan, her desperation palpable. "Nick, You what?" I snapped, cutting her off. "You didn't mean for this to happen? You were manipulated? Save it, Alicia. The evidence speaks for itself." Turning to Donovan, I let my voice drop to a dangerously calm level. "And you, Donovan, was it worth it? The years you spent plotting, scheming, trying to tear me down? You failed at everything else in your life, so you thought you'd steal mine instead." Donovan's composure shattered. "It wasn't just me," he blurted out, his voice rising. "Gabriel knew. Marcus was involved. Hell, even Bella helped cover for her." Gasps rippled through the crowd as the accusations flew. Bella stepped forward, her face twisting in indignation. "Don't you dare drag me into this, Donovan. I didn't sabotage anything. I only suspected what you two were doing." "You're pathetic." Gabriel, standing stoically near the edge of the room, raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Marcus paled, his earlier attempt at redemption now under scrutiny. "You're lying," I said to Donovan, stepping closer. "You're throwing everyone under the bus to save yourself. But it won't work. I know the truth." In the corner of the room, Elena and James stood with one of the estate's staff, their young faces a mixture of confusion and heartbreak. Elena's sharp gaze flicked between Alicia and me, while James clung to his sister, his knuckles white. I crossed the room to them, lowering myself to their level. "Come on," I said softly, my voice trembling. "You don't need to see this." "Dad," Elena said, her voice shaking. "What's happening?" "I'll explain everything later," I promised, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Right now, I just want you both to know that I love you, and I'll always protect you." She nodded, tears pooling in her eyes. I led them to the side door, where a trusted staff member whisked them away to the safety of their rooms. As I returned to the center of the room, I addressed the guests. This isn't just about infidelity. It's about attempted murder. My voice cut through the murmurs like a knife. The brakes on my car were sabotaged. Someone wanted me dead. The room grew impossibly silent as I looked from Alicia to Donovan. Who was it? Donovan cracked first. It was her, he shouted, pointing at Alicia. She was the one who said we had to act fast before you cut her off financially. I just helped make it happen. Alicia spun to face him, her eyes wide with fury. Are you insane? You told me you had a guy for that. I never agreed to. You knew exactly what was happening, Donovan interrupted, his voice shaking. You were all in until it started falling apart. Their alliance shattered completely, their accusations flying back and forth. I turned to Gabriel. Did you know? No, he said firmly, meeting my gaze. I suspected something was wrong when Donovan started asking about security protocols, but I never imagined it went this far. Marcus, still pale, stepped forward hesitantly. Donovan offered me money to give him information, but I swear, I had no part in the sabotage. When I found out how far he was willing to go, I stopped cooperating. The final twist came when Bella, standing apart from the chaos, cleared her throat. You're all missing the point, she said coolly. The sabotage was sloppy, too sloppy for Donovan or Alicia to have done it alone. What are you saying? I demanded. She smirked. I'm saying there's someone else in this room who hasn't spoken yet. Someone who's very good at staying in the shadows. All eyes turned to one of Donovan's lesser-known associates, a man I had only met in passing during corporate dealings. His face turned crimson as the spotlight landed on him. Fine, he muttered, stepping forward. I tampered with the car. Donovan paid me to do it, but I didn't know it would fail. He said it was just supposed to scare you. With the truth laid bare, I pulled out my phone and called Rosa Vega. It's time, I said simply. Minutes later, police officers arrived, led by Rosa herself. Donovan was handcuffed, his protests echoing through the room as he was dragged away. Alicia, left without resources or allies, fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Nick, please, she begged. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was scared, and Donovan manipulated me. You have to believe me. I stared at her, the woman I once loved now a stranger. It's over, Alicia. You made your choice. As she was led away, I turned to the guests, many of whom still stood in stunned silence. You've seen the truth tonight, I said. Let this be a reminder. Trust is fragile. Betrayal has consequences. In the days that followed, the fallout was immense. Donovan faced charges for conspiracy, financial fraud, and attempted murder. Alicia's assets were frozen, leaving her with nothing. Bella and Marcus, despite their ambiguous roles, both offered valuable testimony that helped strengthen the case against Donovan. Gabriel remained by my side, his loyalty ultimately unshaken. For me, the road ahead was uncertain. I had lost a wife, but regained my clarity. My children were my priority now, and I vowed to protect them from the shadows of this betrayal. Justice had been served, but the scars would remain. As I stood on the balcony once more, watching the sunrise, I felt a strange sense of peace. The darkest night was over, and dawn had finally come. The sun rose slowly over the Marchand estate, its golden light creeping across the manicured lawns and reflecting off the mansion's tall windows. Inside, the house was eerily silent. The party, the revelations, and the chaos of the previous night had left everyone exhausted and emotionally drained. I sat in the study, sipping black coffee, the bitter taste a reflection of my mood. Papers littered the desk, divorce documents I'd instructed my lawyer to prepare at dawn. My pen hovered over the first line, Alicia's name glaring at me from the page. This was the official end of something I had once believed unshakable. Elena and James had been quiet since last night. I found them in the family room, curled up on the oversized couch with one of the estate's housekeepers keeping watch. Dad, Elena said as I entered, her voice trembling. I knelt in front of them, brushing a hand over James's hair. I'm here, sweetheart. Her lips quivered. What's going to happen now? With Mom? James buried his face in my shoulder, his small frame shaking. Why does everyone hate each other? I took a deep breath, forcing the tears that threatened to blur my vision back. "Listen to me," I said softly. "What happened last night, what you saw, it was a betrayal of trust. Your mom made some choices that hurt our family, and now there are consequences." Elena sniffled, her sharp mind clearly processing more than she let on. "She lied to you, didn't she?" "Yes," I said honestly. "She lied to all of us. But that doesn't mean she doesn't love you both." James looked up at me, his big, watery eyes searching mine. "Are you going to leave us too?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. "Never," I said firmly, pulling them both into a hug. "I will always be here for you. Always." Later that morning, Detective Rosa Vega arrived with a team of officers. Her expression was calm, professional, but there was a flicker of sympathy in her eyes as she stepped into the house. "Nick," she said, her tone firm but kind, "it's time." I nodded, standing by the front window as the officers escorted Alicia from the guest suite where she had been staying under house arrest. She was still dressed in the remnants of last night's gown, her hair disheveled, her makeup streaked from tears. "Nick," she called out as they led her toward the waiting car. "Please, think about the kids. Don't let this happen. I made mistakes, but we can fix this." Her voice cracked, desperation bleeding through the air. I stepped outside, meeting her gaze. "It's too late, Alicia," I said, my voice low but resolute. "You crossed a line that can't be uncrossed." Her face crumbled, and for a fleeting moment, I saw the woman I had once loved. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone I no longer recognized. As the car pulled away, Donovan was brought in from another vehicle, his hands cuffed and his suit rumpled. His usual smirk was gone, replaced by a scowl. "Don't think this is over," he hissed as he passed me. "You think you've won, but people like me don't go down that easy." I didn't bother replying. The evidence against him was overwhelming. He would face charges for financial fraud, conspiracy, and attempted murder. This time, his charm and money wouldn't save him. The divorce was swift, clinical, and entirely devoid of emotion. My lawyer, Victoria Hayes, was relentless, ensuring every loophole was closed, every asset accounted for. Alicia's attempts to stall were futile. "You're leaving me with nothing," she said during one of our mediated meetings, her voice a mix of anger and disbelief. "You chose this path," I replied, my tone cold. "You and Donovan both." The settlement ensured that she would have no claim to Marchand Innovations or the estate. Her accounts were frozen pending the outcome of the criminal investigation, and any future inheritance from my estate was revoked. The children, however, were my priority. Despite her betrayal, I ensured she would have supervised visitation rights. Elena and James deserved to know their mother, even if I could no longer trust her. In the weeks that followed, the children struggled to make sense of what had happened. Elena withdrew into herself, her once vibrant curiosity replaced by a quiet sadness. I found her in the library one afternoon, staring at a book she wasn't reading. "Sweetheart," I said, sitting beside her, "what's on your mind?" "I just don't understand," she said softly. "Why did she do it? Why did she hurt us?" I struggled to find the right words. Sometimes, people make choices out of fear or greed, and they don't think about the people they're hurting. But that doesn't mean it's your fault, or that you did anything wrong. She nodded slowly, her fingers tracing the edge of the book. James, on the other hand, clung to me constantly. At night, he would crawl into my bed, unable to sleep alone. "I'm scared," he whispered one night. "I know," I said, holding him close. "But I'm here. You're safe." With Alicia and Donovan gone, the house felt different, quieter, but also freer. Marcus, now fully redeemed in my eyes, helped restructure the company to prevent any further vulnerabilities. Gabriel remained a constant presence, his loyalty unshaken, while Bella faded into the background, her ambiguous role never fully clarified. For me, the focus was on rebuilding, not just the company but my family. I spent more time with Elena and James, taking them on weekend trips to the coast and helping Elena with her school projects. Slowly, their smiles began to return, tentative but genuine. One evening, as the sun set over the estate, I sat on the balcony with Elena and James, watching the sky turn shades of pink and orange. "What now, Dad?" Elena asked, her voice steady but curious. "Now," I said, wrapping an arm around each of them, "we start fresh. Together." It wasn't the future I had imagined, but it was a future worth fighting for. The darkness of betrayal had passed, and though scars remained, the dawn brought hope. For the first time in months, I felt at peace. 3 years had passed since the night that changed everything, and though the scars of betrayal lingered, life had found a way to move forward. The day began as it often did. Sunlight streaming through the large windows of the breakfast nook, the scent of fresh coffee filling the air. Elena, now 15, sat at the table, scrolling through her tablet as she sipped her tea. Her dark hair, once wild and untamed, was now neatly tied back in a ponytail, and her gaze was sharp, reflecting the quiet wisdom she had gained over the years. "Did you see the email from Stanford?" she asked, glancing up at me. I chuckled, setting my coffee down. "You're 15, Elena. You've got plenty of time before college applications." She smirked, a hint of her mother's charm shining through. "Doesn't hurt to be prepared." James, now 12, bounded into the room, his energy a stark contrast to Elena's measured demeanor. He was clutching a basketball, his excitement barely contained. "Dad, you promised we'd practice after breakfast," he exclaimed, his cheeks flushed with anticipation. "And we will," I said, ruffling his hair. "But only if you finish your pancakes first." He groaned dramatically but slid into his seat, attacking the stack of pancakes with the enthusiasm only a 12-year-old could muster. After the fallout, I had taken a more hands-on approach to Marchand innovations. The company had not only survived but thrived, emerging stronger and more resilient than ever. The headquarters in Palo Alto had undergone a transformation, with an entire wing dedicated to sustainability initiatives. We had partnered with major universities to develop cutting-edge technology, and our stock price had doubled in the past year alone. Marcus Wade, once teetering on the edge of betrayal, had proven his loyalty. He now served as my COO, overseeing daily operations with a meticulous eye. Gabriel Rossi had been promoted to head of global security, a role he handled with his usual stoic precision. As for me, I had stepped back slightly, delegating more responsibilities so I could focus on my children. Alicia was a ghost now, a shadow of the woman she once was. After her conviction for conspiracy and fraud, she had disappeared from the public eye. Occasionally, I would hear whispers of her attempts to rebuild her life, but she was no longer a presence in mine, or the children's. Donovan's fate had been more dramatic. After a high-profile trial, he was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison for his role in the attempted murder and financial crimes. His fall from grace had been swift and brutal, a cautionary tale whispered in Silicon Valley boardrooms. Though they were both out of our lives, their betrayal had left a lasting impact. Trust, I had learned, was a fragile thing, but it was also something that could be rebuilt with time. The estate, once a place of secrets and betrayal, had become a sanctuary. Family dinners were filled with laughter, the walls no longer echoing with tension. Friends and colleagues visited often, their presence a reminder of the life we had rebuilt. I had even started dating again, a venture I approached cautiously but with an open heart. The woman I was seeing, Claire, was a writer with a sharp wit and a kind smile. She had met Elena and James recently, and though I didn't push for anything too quickly, it felt right. What would you do if you discovered someone close to you had not only betrayed your trust but put your life in danger? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Thanks for being here. Don't forget to subscribe to Cheating Storytelling so you never miss an update on more real-life stories. And as always, see you in the next video.